Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I've got to tell you up front that I'm so excited about today's episode because I already love today's guest and his work and his company and the way that he operates. Because let me just read you a little bit of a teaser from his website that immediately stood out. On his website, I read, "Every decision you make holds weight. Let us lighten the load." And I think that perfectly encapsulates today's guest and fellow entrepreneur, his supportive spirit, and really the way that he views his role as uplifting others and unlocking their own growth. So let me introduce you to him. His name is Kris Rohman. Kris is the founder of ROH Consulting, specializing in helping business owners streamline operations, align teams, and drive sustainable growth. With over 20 years of experience leading marketing initiatives for Fortune 100 companies and scaling businesses through strategic initiatives, Kris delivers hands-on expertise and proven frameworks to unlock efficiency and growth. And we're going to hear him say some very important words that I think we need to talk a lot more about in the entrepreneurial world, such as clarity and growth and scale and intention and strategy. There's going to be a lot of good stuff in this one, so I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Kris Rohman. All right, Kris, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Heck yes, you've got a lot to live up to from that intro because I already love the stuff that you're doing. So let's start with you taking us beyond the bio. Who's Kris? How'd you start doing all this cool stuff?
You know, I didn't really set out to be an entrepreneur. I just kept following the challenges. The opportunities to stretch myself a little bit more, and wanted just to keep pushing and trying to find my groove and challenge what's possible for me to do. So I started out in marketing and was a project manager, and then really got comfortable with managing a project, and then wanted to do more and more and more, and ended up moving into operations and then becoming a COO of a company and a president of a company, and went through the twists and turns and the ups and downs of all of that, but ultimately chose to start my own company. And there's an interesting story there where I got a great opportunity with Apple, and I was like, well, this is my next opportunity. I interviewed, not too much came out of it. And eventually I just looked around and said, hey, I need to start making decisions here on my own, and let me take the wheel in terms of what my next opportunity and next challenge would be. And that was starting my business.
Yeah, I love that overview, Kris, especially because I already know how intentional you are with your words, and you talk about taking the wheel, and it just fits in so well with your copy and your messaging behind your business. Because the big headline on your website, I'm going to pull so much from your website today, and I don't usually do that, but I think you articulate things in such a really cool and intentional way. And you talk about taking the wheel. The headline on your website is regain control, achieve clarity, and unlock growth. Why do those three things fit in together, and why are those the three things that factor so much into the way you think and approach things?
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of founders and a lot of CEOs that I can see it. When I worked for others, I could just see the complexities in their eyes, and felt like they were losing control of their company. They started it for one reason, and they ran into roadblocks, and then it got fragmented along the way. And I really feel like when I was writing that and trying to think about what value I could bring, it was, let me look through the eyes of the owner, of the CEO, and really speak to them. Because oftentimes, regardless of the industry or who I work with, those are usually the things that they're looking to gain, is the clarity and really how to unlock sustainable growth.
Yeah, Kris, it makes me think of that phrase that people throw around about entrepreneurs, which is we jump off the cliff and we build the parachute on the way down. And hearing you talk about regaining control and hearing you talk about making sure we stay on that path, I guess where I'd love to start our conversation today is, what the heck is that path? Because what you talk about, a lot of founders probably think, Kris, I always feel that way. Isn't that just the normal way that we feel as founders? How do you even begin to make sense of, this is the path we want to go on, and let's make sure we actually stay there in a world that changes so frequently?
Yeah, so we're working with founders. I tend to look at what is going on outside of their view. They'll tell me, oh, this is the issue or this is the problem. And what I like to do is go into deeper with the people surrounding them. So stakeholders, what are the main players within the company, and build quick rapport with them so I can get really what's going on. And I think that's important for me to come back with that information to the founder and say, hey, this is the issues that you're facing. These are the themes that I hear, and really work with them to say, hey, is this something you're really interested in? One of the things that I've learned along the way is finding clients that are motivated to get better. It's not great when you work with someone who's like really pushing back on the change. And I think that's the important thing, to outline a roadmap that they're excited about, and keep them accountable and excited along the way.
Yeah, Kris, hearing you talk about making sense of, you use those words, what's going on, where my head goes, and these are terms that I use internally a lot, which is taking inventories. I remind myself every 30, 60, 90 days, especially, as I'm just like, I need to take inventory. I take inventory of life. I take inventory of business. I want to make sense of it all, Kris, but it's not so easy to do in a world where things move fast. And in business, we all experience that in marketing and sales and fulfillment and our own teams and HR and lots of stuff that happens behind the scenes. How does Kris Rohman walk into a business and try to make sense of a living, breathing thing involving so many different people? What are those areas you look at? What are the questions that you ask? How do you start to make sense of it all?
Yeah, I look at it from several different perspectives, and really it comes down to accountability and is that part of the culture? I try to get a sense of the culture. I try to use tools like EOS, which is an operating system that allows you to outline the vision and the goals and core values and share that outwardly with the team, so that the team feels part of something bigger than just I come to work. And I think if you can create an environment that employees resonate with, everything starts to gel and everything starts to move forward. I think that's really important, an important way to find a groove and find that path to get to a better place. And like you mentioned, things change so rapidly, so it never ends. Lowe's used to have Lowe's, the hardware company, used to have a tagline of "never stop improving," and I literally think that is so true about businesses. As soon as you plug one hole, another one opens. But creating a framework that allows you to see it and allows you to, in real time, get to the root of the problem is really key. Because if you start to work your brain in that way and get a team to think in that way, you can bypass several different issues or roadblocks in a much quicker way than you would from a disorganized stance.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me, Kris, having the chance to sit down with you today, because if someone looks at your resume, your background, obviously you've got marketing experience inside of Fortune 100 companies, but I also see that you're throwing terms around like operations and processes. And it's so fascinating to me because oftentimes in business, when we talk about scale, we just assume, apply all the sales in the world, all the revenue, and that's going to fix all of your business problems. Where along the way did you really broaden that business vision and that business IQ? Because it's so clear to me that you think about things way beyond just through the lens of marketing, that you tie all of it in. Where's that come from?
It's just coming from experience of seeing what really works and what doesn't. I think there's a phrase that says sales solves all problems. And I actually don't think that. I think sometimes if you scale too fast and don't have the infrastructure, then you're going to fail because the team and the process isn't going to allow for it. So I think through my years of just seeing things, I really like to look at it holistically and think about the people and the process and the product or whatever you're selling, and making sure there's some consistent balance there. Because like you mentioned, just pushing all things for sales and trying to scale that way, while you may gain some growth, it isn't going to be sustainable, and it's going to start to show the cracks, and you're going to ruin your reputation, or tend to, because you're going to overextend your team and deliver subpar work.
Yeah, it's funny. My early 20s self, when I started my marketing agency, I probably would have not understood these things that you're saying, Kris, because I always thought about, well, if you give us more revenue, we can make sense of that. We can hire more people. There's a lot that we can navigate there. Talk to us about some of those common pitfalls and some of the things that entrepreneurs and business owners may not be aware of that come with scale, that if we think about it and talk about it now, which I'm grateful that you're here doing that with us, if we think about it and talk about it now, how does that set us up moving forward?
Right. I think some common pitfalls are I'm going to hire my way out of it. You sort of touched upon that right there, where you think, okay, if I hire the right people and quickly do it, it will make sense. I think other thoughts are, hey, I can make a culture, or I can make the company and I can say what this culture should be or these core values should be, but not truly living them. And I think that's really important. Culture is key for me. And I really believe that if you treat people right and you allow for them to expand and grow in the right ways, it will benefit your business. So I see some owners go like, well, I'm going to cut corners on paying people. I'm not going to offer certain benefits because I want to save a buck. But it really ultimately puts you into a challenging position that doesn't allow you to find the success that you're capable of finding. I think investing inward allows you to grow outward. That's just my 2 cents, and gathered through years of experience working with a variety of different companies.
Yeah, you talk about culture being so important. Of course, it's also probably the hardest thing to master in business. People are the biggest complexity in business. And when you talk about culture, it's intangible. It's not something that we can point at. We can't look at a metric like we can in a marketing campaign and say, oh, it's working, or oh, it's not working. How do you make sense of culture? What is it that you look for inside of a company to identify its culture? And then obviously, importantly, along the lines of what you do for work, is how do you actually make positive strides forward with regards to that culture?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for culture isn't the perks. It isn't, hey, let's have happy hours or whatever that might be. I think it all comes down to trust. And trust is a big, do you trust your manager? Do you trust the people you work with? And if you can find those, if you can build upon that so that you trust that someone's going to follow through on something that they said they were going to do, or you trust that you are going to have support from your colleagues when you're in a stressed moment, that is what leads to a strong culture. And with that as at the core, you can really build and you can really get to the human side of things, which I'm really a strong proponent of like making sure that we're looking at the business as driven by humans, as people. And when you get off that, you start to look at things start to happen where it's more clients are looking like becoming greedy or wanting to manufacture something that's really not there. I have founders that will say, oh, hey, I want a core value to be, we're really big on communication or transparency. But what I find through interviews is they're not that person. So I think you have to relate like the head people and the leadership team have to embody the core values so it could really permeate through the company and create that culture that is built on reality, not on just some words that are put on paper.
Yes, so well said. A huge challenge for all of us in our own businesses and teams, but one that you lit up, Kris. As soon as you said focusing on the people, you absolutely light up about that. So I want to switch gears a little bit and go deeper there, because obviously what you do with your own business, ROH Consulting, is that you work with the people. You empower those people. And I teased it at the very top of today's episode about you being that real support staff to lighten that load, so to speak, that we all carry as founders. Talk to us about how you operate. What's that actually look like in the way that you bring your services to the clients you work with?
Yeah, I think when I mention trust, it's about building trust with them too. I come into it from an outside perspective, and I'm not just someone who's going to say, hey, this is what you need to do and leave. I'm going to be in the trenches with you. I'm going to help you get to where you need to be. So there's part of it is a consultant, part of it is a support network for them to know, to allow them to take the leap, to take the steps forward, to make a change. So I really lead with the trust. I really lead with tangible tangible elements that they can really tie themselves to and understand how little things can be more successful. So that's my way of getting in, is really building rapport, building trust, and ultimately allowing them, for me to take a little of that burden off of them, as you mentioned in that line on my website, so that they can be freed up for their unique ability. Lots of times founders are trying to be the visionary and what I call is the integrator, more on the operations side. So oftentimes they're trying to do both, which is really difficult. And I've never really seen anyone be able to do both. So by coming in and being that integrator, someone who can take their ideas and their vision and make them come to life while augmenting other staff and making moves within the companies, allows them, free them up so that they can be focused on what really they do best, which is why they started the company in the first place. Oftentimes, is to really be focused on that.
Yeah, Kris, it's so interesting hearing your perspective there, because I do feel like it's a bit of a paradigm shift. And as someone who talks to amazing entrepreneurs for a living, I find that every entrepreneur is a mix of both. You talk about that visionary as well as that integrator, and they're good at what they do, which is why they take it upon themselves. It's not easy to start a business, but they go ahead and do that. And a lot of times I hear from founders behind closed doors when we're not recording, is they're just like, well, I don't know what I would do if I'm solely an executive, a CEO, not just a business owner, but if I act as an executor, I don't know what that looks like. How do I put my visionary self to my best paces? Does it look like I go for a walk and I think of things while I'm out there? Like, what is that role, Kris? Because you've seen behind the lines at big businesses, small businesses. Talk to us about that visionary role that we as business owners can step into.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with what you're trying to accomplish as a business owner and a visionary. I think there's a lot of different types that I've worked with. There's the visionary that's realistic, and then there's the visionary who's way too blue sky. And that's where I can help to bring it back to a little bit of reality and keep, that whole thing of like just chasing shiny objects. That's where I think that there's two distinct different types of visionaries, and those require different ways to look at how I would work with them. Oftentimes, the best one is to work with, obviously, is the visionary who has a realistic sense of what's going on and what's possible. But I will say, on the flip side, a visionary who's like really way blue sky, they tend to have really great ideas that just need to be worked out and reshape them a little bit to make them successful out in the world.
Yeah, it's so interesting thinking about those blends and differences in so many different founders. We're all obviously different from each other. And Kris, what I think is a really interesting addition to the mix is you're also a founder. You're a fellow entrepreneur. So with that hat on, knowing the role you play with your clients, I'd love to hear how you, as the owner and founder of your own business, how you balance these roles personally within your own organization to achieve that growth while also bringing the amazing results to your clients that you do.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, just like I said, trying to do both of those roles is difficult. I think it's really hard. And what's the biggest thing that I've found? It's really hard to switch those gears, to go from, all right, I'm a doer and I'm a working, to like, what could this be? And I got started with really not much expectations. And as I've gone through and learned from others and asked questions, I've really found that in the beginning, you can be both, and I've worked on trying to be both. But what's part of my personality is go with the flow and sort of be spontaneous. So I have never done a business plan. I've sort of just worked my way into going, oh, okay, I can offer this value. And just recently, I've been like restructuring the way how I can free up my time, how I can buy my time back and give opportunities to others within my network that fit better with them and not so with me. Because I think as I've learned and I've gone through, I've realized, okay, I need to take on work that really excites me, because that's why I got started. It really excites me, and just like I had mentioned before, takes on satisfies my unique abilities and things that I'm interested in. So I think it's tough with the balance, but I found a good groove right now. But as I continue to grow, I can see it starting to become an issue, which that's what I offer. So it's one of those things too. Hopefully I can take some of my own advice.
Yeah, I love that. Hey, Kris, I'll out myself here that when I started my SEO agency back in 2012, it was a classic case of the cobbler's son has no shoes. I was doing SEO for everybody else's website except for my own. So yeah, it's really cool to openly acknowledge these are the situations that we're all in. And Kris, as your business continues to grow, it's fun that you're figuring these things out and also sharpening your toolkit based on your own business and the clients that you work with. Along those lines, I really appreciate the mindset component of it. I don't think we have that conversation often enough in the world of entrepreneurship, is that we as entrepreneurs, we all go through mindset stuff. I would imagine the leaders and the executives that you work with, part of the work you do with them is also mindset based. I know that part of what you do is accountability, which is an essential ingredient and mindset of not just saying I'm going to do something, but following through with it. What's the mindset component look like? Is that something that clients say, Kris, I want to have these conversations with you. I want to work through them because it's going to make me a better leader? Or is this something that you're just aware of that's in the background of all your projects?
I think it's both. And I think the best clients are the ones who are interested in the mindset in terms of how they're looking at the work that we're going to do together. If they're looking at it just as a quick win, oh, I'm going to get, Kris's time for a few weeks or a couple months and then move on. I think really the mindset is shifting the way that they want to think about their business. And if I can help them do that, that's my aim, because you start to unlock a lot of goodness when you trust the process. And I have a client right now who we broke down his company into little pieces. He wanted that. And we restructured and did a lot of like housekeeping, so to speak. And we're now in the stage where we've built it back up and he's seeing the success. He's seeing the system. He's seeing the money in his account. And I think that's a big, big component to the mindset of going, all right, I realize this is a journey and not just a one-time stop.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk metrics for a second, Kris, because I think it's so clear this deep into our conversation, how many different ways that this work yields benefits. I mean, I can think about, you've already talked extensively about culture, that culture improves when we do this operational improvement, when we have these scalable systems. Revenue, of course, that's a metric that we all care about and that we're all interested in. What are those different components? Because I would imagine this comes up not only in your sales conversations, but in your ongoing client reporting of, hey, look at the progress that we've made. What are some of those metrics and things that you look towards for results?
Yeah, so part of EOS and some of that I work on is a scorecard. And a scorecard, the idea with it is if the owner was away on some deserted island with no internet, wouldn't that be nice? Then if he looked at the scorecard, would he be able to see if the company was being successful or not? So there's a wide variety, and that just depends on what clients are interested in. Some are sales, some is tenure, the length of tenure, some are client satisfaction scores. But ultimately, as with any business, it's about growth, and growth usually is about profit and revenue. And I really look more at the profit number, because revenue is great to scale up, but are you being efficient with how you're doing the work? And so really the biggest one is that profit. And that's what I referenced from a previous client. He's so excited about, because he was stagnant. And then it dipped a little bit, and now to see it go up. So looking at all those numbers on a weekly basis, you start to see trends, and you start to see the wins, those little wins. Oh, client satisfaction went up a little bit. Oh, our sales, we got 50 sales versus 38 the last week. All of those things lead to momentum, and momentum, you can't really capture. It's like basketball game, right? You can see the box score, but momentum is just a feel. But momentum is what companies need to keep knowing that they're marching in the right direction, and that helps founders, CEOs know that they're going in the right direction by having that momentum.
Ooh, I love the way you answered that, Kris, because what really comes to mind for me is short-term momentum and long-term momentum, because they're both very powerful forces. Some things are more controllable than others. Of course, we can't control the long-term stuff, but looking at those quick wins, those you talk about, look in 1 week increments. We're making forward progress in those 1 week increments. Talk to us about the short term versus long term, because a lot of us, we are the instant gratification society. We do want instant wins, but some of them, it truly is the win is just building that snowball, that the further it goes down the hill, longer term, we're going to look backwards a year from now and say, wow, look at all that work that we did. How much do you focus on short term versus that long term?
Yeah, I think the way that I approach it with clients is, what are your annual goals? And then let's break those down into quarterly goals. And then let's break those down into goals that we're working on in a like what I would call action items. So everything is connected to each other. So you never want to take your eye off too far off the long-term goal, and vice versa. So it's that nice mix. And by looking at things weekly and then doing quarterly check-ins, you always go back to the annual goal to keep everything, that through line. So they're both important. Obviously, getting those quick wins are about the now, but by doing quarterly reviews and looking at quarterly goals, you can start to gain momentum in a much broader sense, meaning in bigger chunks of time, which just propels the company further and further and further. So going back to the client I just mentioned, we just went through in the end of March, went through our quarterly review. We looked back and he was like, whoa, I can't believe how much we accomplished. So it's nice to have those moments in time to look back, because everything is so rapid and so fast that you sort of forget. So you're taking that pause, turn around, look at all the things you've accomplished, and then get back to work.
Yes, Kris, listeners know how much I love quarters. I always argue that 90 days is such an incredible period of time. It's super actionable, but we can also get a lot done within a 90-day period. And so listeners know that immediately perks my ears up. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Kris, totally unprompted. Can you tease to us some of those questions? What's a quarterly review look like in your world?
Yeah, so the quarterly review would be, let's see all the wins that we received, or achieved rather, and then look at all of the things that did not go well. So it's like, what went well? Those are the wins. What didn't go well? And then what should we continue to focus on? And what I like to do is look at those components and then talk to the room, the team, and say, what are the issues we're facing right now? And it's surprising when you do that in quarterly chunks and you look back to the quarter before, and they're completely different. And, going back to never stop improving, that's the key part right there, is looking at it in that quarterly review of saying, okay, what happened? Now let's move forward. But those questions I ask people to come with is, what's worked, what hasn't, and what do you think are the biggest roadblocks for success moving forward? And by getting those answers and then looking at the themes, we can then craft what the next quarter looks like.
Yes, I love that. Kris, it is absolutely no surprise to me that you help deliver amazing results for leaders and businesses and founders, because this is the intention that I promised listeners at the very top of today's episode, is that when you're doing things this intentionally, things don't happen by mistake, and you're really taking control, coming all the way back full circle to the top of our conversation, taking control of our trajectory and the path that we're on. So I love these answers and insights. This is the last question that I ask at the end of every episode. It's super broad. I have no idea which direction you're going to take it in, and that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, and knowing that you're not just a subject matter expert on all the things we've talked about, but you're one of us, you're a fellow entrepreneur. What's that piece of advice that you want to leave them with today?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing that I learned is trusting myself. And I think by trusting myself is such a big component, not only in life, but in business. And someone asked me, like, why would you want to go into your own business? And are you worried about if it doesn't work? And my take was, I'm always going to bet on myself. always. So I bet on myself. I know that by betting on myself, I'm going to figure out the way. It's been part of my, I mentioned up front about just chasing bigger challenges. It became a challenge, and I am a competitive person and want to succeed. So biggest piece of advice is just trust yourself. If you believe in your product and what you're selling, bet on yourself, and that is going to put you in a great position to succeed.
Yes, I love that advice. As a fellow competitive person, Kris, it's no surprise to me when you said that, because I'm not going to lie, at the end of this episode, I'm feeling pretty inspired and motivated to be very strategic and intentional about the next 90 days and beyond. You've so delivered on all of those things here today. So for listeners who want to check out more about the work that you're doing, and I love your website, how it lays out your personal backstory and your services, your testimonials, your clients love you, Kris. It's always great to see that. Drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yeah, on my website. You've been nicely promoting it. My website is rohconsulting.com. It's ROH-consulting.com. That's where you can find all the information you just mentioned, as well as get in touch with me. I'm big on supporting others that are also on this path. So reach out for anything that might come up, and certainly welcome any other inquiries.
Yes, and listeners, you already know the drill. We're making it as easy as possible for you to find Kris's link down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. Find those show notes. You don't have to remember it, although it's not hard to remember. It's his business name, roh-consulting.com. Super easy to find Kris online. We're also linking to his personal LinkedIn, so if you want to reach out to him and continue the conversation. I know a podcast, it's a one-way conversation to you, the listeners, but if you want to engage with Kris, don't be shy in reaching out and having him in your network. So Kris, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Brian.